The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we have John Shute, CEO of Puf Creativ, on the show. And for those of you out there, I have to apologize. I am a little sniffly today, but as we always say, the show must go on. So if I'm a little hoarse and sniffly, you will know why. And
You sound
welcome,
great.
John.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Well, it's like before we started recording, we were talking about the last time we saw each other was at the MJ's, and I just
Congratulate you right back. That was so cool to connect for the first time in that moment. You know, such good energy.
Oh, totally. I mean, how many times do you get that kind of excitement and energy all in one big room?
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, this past MJ BizCon was just insane in a good way for me personally and the company. So yeah, I'm glad I got to close it out by meeting you.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
I know. It's so awesome. Yeah, it was the total cherry on the sundae. It's very cool. So before we have so much to talk about today, but before we dig into all of that, the question I always like to ask all my guests was, what was your first cannabis experience?
Yeah, you kind of prepped me on that before we started recording, and my brain was racing, and I want to say my first time consuming cannabis was my two friends that I played soccer with when I was like 13 years old, like slept over. I think they already like had tried cannabis because they had like older siblings. And my one friend was like, and so he made himself like a little clay bowl. And I think we like put my like covers over our heads and like smoked like it wasn't gonna smell. And then I remember my mom coming in the morning and like asking about it, and we were just like, oh, we burnt incense last night, like we didn't, it's not weed, even though she definitely probably knew what it was. So yeah, it was like really early on, like I feel like compared to most, like I just got exposed to it. I guess it's worth bringing up that like I feel like because of the young age, and being from New Jersey, like, one of the most recent legal states, but, when I was 13, it was not legal. And, yeah, I was like very, because I said I continued to consume because I felt it felt right, I didn't really understand, but like I just was naturally like into it. I was always into like extreme sports and like music and stuff, so I feel like it just complemented that well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was judged very early on by like my peers, like other parents and stuff like that. And I feel like I always kind of took that motivation and that criticism to heart. And when I, later down in life, like had this opportunity to get into the cannabis industry, it was almost like a dream come true because I had all of this like negative build up energy from like that judgment and that criticism for something that like just naturally made sense to me. And I feel like that's what's kind of led me down this path that I'm on now, was just like really kind of turning a really negative situation and negative feelings into this more positive one, that like the life I'm living now in like legal cannabis. So
Yeah. Isn't it
um
wild how that changes? Because I had the same thing. I was the same age as you when I first experimented with it. And in high school, I had a few friends that were I had classmates that were judgmental. And I think some of them might listen to the podcast now.
yeah, I mean that's like what I find even more intriguing about like where I'm at now is like a lot of my peers that were my age who like made me feel a certain way, like they ended up, taking it too far with, drug experimentation. And a lot of the parents or even family members who kind of criticized me then now like are asking me for advice, like, hey, like I'm seeking like alternative medicine, or hey, my mental health like isn't good. And so that's really cool to like experience that. And it, unfortunately I have to be like, hey, I'm not a doctor, but like based on like my experience and like my education, like I try to give good advice and like guide people in the right way. But um, I feel like the problem with like new consumers is just a lot of folks don't realize that how deep it goes at a personal level with cannabis. Like every strain, terpene, cannabinoid, method of consumption is going to impact each person differently. So, you really have to, find your groove, I guess you'd say. So I usually tell people to kind of start slow and low, no matter if, especially if they're like a new user. But yeah, it's just really cool that like that's the reality that I'm living in now is like all these people judge me for years and then now like I'm giving them advice and they're tuned in to like what I have going on because it's, pretty intriguing. And now we're diving into like psychedelics, like branding and marketing, and that's kind of opening up a whole new can of worms with conversations when I go home and like visit family or, talk to my peers. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
that is cool. I mean, there's a lot of shift when we start to destigmatize things, and then people get
Yeah.
curious because like before, so many people are moved by stigma rather than thinking for themselves. And then those of us that were like precocious and maybe like, and a lot of us are really creative and we're like, hey, I want to like, you know, see something through a different lens. And then other people kind
Yeah.
of join in later, and it can create some really rich conversations and just kind of bridging some gaps that were there before.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly like kind of live for that. And then like that's like why I even do what I do. People think of I feel like branding and marketing like in a little box, and I think of it as this kind of, pathway to change and great conversations in the world that we live in. Like, if you want to do anything, like you're gonna need branding and a website, and you need to make you need to put that stake in the ground. But in this world now it's a digital stake that you need to put in. So yeah, I live for kind of bridging that gap for people, and that's like ultimately like what led me into my professional career in cannabis was, I mentioned, I had friends who were judging me, and then they kind of took, drugs a little bit too far. And uh, you know, it was people like overdosing in my life and family and friends that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I feel like with me stopping what I was doing at the time. I think at that moment I was a marketing and operations guy for a nightclub, which is like not my forte. Kind of just fell into that after I got my master's degree. But watching people struggle and some people pass away, knowing that there's like an alternative for them out there and like an answer that's just like very natural and not as harmful as like a lot of alternatives that modern day medicine tries to advise people to take. That really kind of pushed me over the edge of like, okay, I can take all of my emotional intelligence and marketing knowledge and just world knowledge and apply this to an industry that's new and could potentially save lives or, just change someone's life day to day where, people are struggling with, mental health or have a negative perspective on themselves or just life, when there's just this alternative out there that can give you, like you mentioned, that kind of shift in perspective. So yeah, it's really the opiate epidemic, which like led me to here. But once I got into the industry and learned not only, seed to sale and marketing tactics, but learned about the plant and all of these other nuances that go along with it, yeah, like it can help people with drug addiction and with, that, but there's a whole other side to it of mental health. There's a whole side of it to social justice. There's a whole environmental side to it. And in my opinion, like when you have an opportunity to kind of get your hands into all of those things while being able to grow a business and employ people, and it's hard not to see if the juice is worth the squeeze. And, I
Yeah.
did. And, luckily I got in a really good time. And, I think my experience is way different, but it's been like a beautiful disaster. Like it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And every day I wake up like extremely motivated to do what I'm doing because of this opportunity that's in front of everyone in cannabis, let alone just myself. But the industry, I mean, like you said, we're going to be talking about this in like 30 years. Like, wow, like we were the pioneers, like we were in it in the beginning. Um, but yeah, when you enter a industry there's a lot of gray area with politics and a lot of money being thrown around and poor decisions being made, and uncertainty and stigma and people in jail for a plant, and some people are making money. It just breeds disaster along that way. So yeah, I try to shine a light through that, that darkness and that chaos, with my staff, with my clients, just like anyone that kind of crosses like my path. Like there's so much. Yeah, it's really stressful industry. It's crazy, but the good, there's so much that isn't talked about, in my opinion, that
Yeah.
like I feel like motivates me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I think what keeps a lot of us here, because as
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of people like rush in when they were like, oh, we're going to make a lot of money. All this legalization's happening. It's only a matter of time until things change on the federal level. And then as like bad decisions were made and money dried up, the people
Yeah.
who aren't necessarily here for the same reasons you and I are just like, see ya. I'm going. I'll maybe I'll come back when things calm down. But there is something about like that that intersection of health and social justice, and
Yeah.
in creating abundance, but also creating, supporting your communities and having compassion, that is the embodiment of what a lot of us are here for.
Yeah, and like I just feel like I've always tried to approach it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely made a bunch of mistakes, right? Like I think everyone does.
Also, who hasn't?
Um, but I've always tried to keep that perspective as like the forefront of like, the shield, like is that perspective as I'm kind of navigating my way through, this landscape. Um, but I feel like at any level, no matter what you do in the industry, if you take that perspective, especially with marketing, I feel like my team is way more motivated. Like I feel like we are a family and like we all kind of have this respect for each other and the planet and our clients and the work that we do. So the environment as like a business is like way better than like others that I've seen because we kind of share this bond. And then with like the results too, like if you have that perspective and you're trying to make a difference and connect with community, that's a big part of the missing piece that a lot of cannabis operators and brands and other businesses out there just aren't doing. And it's not, in my opinion, like it's not fun if you're not having that perspective or that in community engagement or some type of passion that's like the driving force behind the day to day of this operation that usually is like very intensive. So why not make it better,
Yeah.
And we have like my team, like when we're executing marketing campaigns for people, and if I'm doing like consulting and helping people with strategy, that's like the first thing that we talk about. Like, hey, like, why'd you get in this? Like, how can we tie this together with like your story and like your target demographic and bring community in this and give all the consumers and potential consumers and new users a sense of like, hey, I feel really comfortable like with this brand or this retailer or whatever, this consulting group. And like, yeah, like let's do the damn thing. Like let's make this awesome, and it's a little bit frustrating that a lot of folks don't have that kind of perspective. And I feel like, yeah, like from a service base, like we'll still do a good job and see great results. But if that underlying motivation and passion is there, man, like you can really crush it.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
try to encourage people to have to take that approach, but you can only tell people the same thing so many times.
I
Um,
think you're so right about that. I mean, it's as we start to see a lot of people coming into the industry, and especially larger companies, and as I say this, there's room for everybody. I'm a huge supporter of small business and mom and pops, because the jobs and the money stay in the communities, and I feel like there's more of a personal touch. But there's also something to be said for larger companies. Some people find that they trust companies that have models that are repetitive. They're like, I know what I'm gonna get. That's why we have small like bistros, and we have Chili's at places.
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
appeals.
I mean, you see it in cannabis, and it's so funny you bring this up because we had a business development call yesterday, and this is literally what we're talking about is like, who is our customer, right? Because in cannabis, it's really interesting where I almost enjoy working with small mom and pop shops, but the downside is it's like way harder for them. They're way tighter on budgets. A lot of them haven't been a part of like a successful, retail model or brand model, and there's kind of winging it, but there's that passion there. But the other side of it's hard. Whereas like the bigger companies, they have the resources, they have the real estate, they have the experience, but they almost like jostle you around in situations because they can. And so as a business, it's like, is our target customer in the middle? We kind of work with everyone right now, but it's interesting to experience like the complete opposite ends of the spectrums in a brand new industry, because for someone like me who's running like an agency, at some point you really, should have probably done this earlier on, but at some point, we really need to dial in like, who are we going after and why? And I feel like, you can be at such a crossroads in an industry like this at this point.
Yeah.
Because just like, our like politics and our economy, the difference between the larger companies and the smaller ones, it's like night and day. So it's wild.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition, and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. It is wild. And I think we've moved a little bit more away from like company culture and company ethos when we look at dispensaries. And, for people who have jumped into cannabis, they don't necessarily understand like on the ground floor, like how incredibly emotional and personal cannabis is for a lot of people. They're like, it's a consumer packaged product. We're looking at CPG, we're looking at formula retail, we're looking at deals. But when you look at, and I see this, and you as a musician, thinking about like cultivating true blue fans versus
Yeah.
who's looking at, well, what deals are where and where do I go? Like consumer loyalty is the same as like loyalty in music. It's like, if you're giving something of substance and they feel like they see themselves in something, they see themselves as a part of something, they feel support from an organization or, whatever it may be, that's what gets people to come back. And I think it's one of the biggest disconnects that we're now seeing as things start to grow. And also looking
Yeah.
at how do we capture that large part of the market that's been very undervalued. Like, hey, nothing against stoner culture. Lord knows I have been in this long enough. Like I understand the value of it. I've been part of it, but it's a very small segment of our population. And so how do
Yeah.
we have those conversations to the greater audience that might be curious about using cannabis for wellness? Or, because we're not, now that we don't need the loophole of medicinal, we've largely forgotten that conversation. And no, we're not healthcare providers, but we are navigators to help people create a good match for themselves and create that safe container for experimentation to create successful outcomes. So even if it doesn't work well for them, because their bodies aren't, like I always like to say, even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, not everybody tolerates phytocannabinoids. And the
Yeah.
message from that is, and that's okay. Because,
Yeah.
we don't want people saying, oh, because, human beings, if it's not good for me, it must not be good for anybody. So that's going to be my
Yeah.
line.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah.
No, those are some really valid points, and it's so funny. I wish I could shout this person out on LinkedIn because I just saw a stat that really stood out to me this morning, where it's like 60% of the people that come through your door are not going to come back again, and 40% are. So, to your point with loyalty and retention and trust, it is actually so important because it's way cheaper to keep someone coming back than to acquire a new customer.
Right.
And to your point, how do you attract keep attracting stoner culture,
Yeah.
but also be very path of least resistance to get folks who aren't stoners through your door and into your program. And in terms of like getting stoners through the door, they're going to come. I think it really comes down to having quality products that they can trust and like they're going to like and catering to that.
Yeah.
In terms of like addressing getting new people through the door and just being able to attract everyone, we try to address that like very early on in the process. And it kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier is, hey, why did you get in this? How can we create a story around you and your brand that's going to resonate with people? And how can we create messaging and design that's going to resonate with them and make them feel comfortable and not make them feel like they're not invited to the party or not invited to take care of themselves? And so we early on try to find that balance of design and messaging and target customer and get that through, like get people to commit to that. Cause a lot of people across my desk are like, yeah, we just want a logo. We don't want to spend money on messaging and customer profiles or, anything like that. Like we'll figure that out on our own. And then a lot of times, like 6 months later, a year later, they're like, hey, like, where did we drop the ball? And it's like, well, we tried to take you through a formal process that we could work on together to come up with this messaging and this design and these concepts that are going to resonate with an actual target demographic that you can help and also generate revenue off of and create this kind of harmony. And so we find a lot of success with the people that go through that exercise with us on both the like brand and retail side specifically. Then, once you're able to create that brand and like really have an identity that's gonna be inviting for people, no matter who they are, um, then it's like, okay, how do we get people through the door? And that's when it comes to let's create, a custom website that complements this very well. A big part of that is, yeah, it's the design, it's the UX, but with retailers, a big factor, specifically retailers, is their tech stack. Who did you choose as your POS? Who are we integrating e-commerce with? And we've launched our own e-commerce solutions because we know how important that is, and we want to make sure we have like a solution that like our clients can trust. And then all of that plays into 50 to 80% of a retailer. Sorry, I'm just talking straight with the retailers, but it's a big conversation. Is like, okay, I have a great brand, great website. I have native e-commerce, which is the best solution to customize the e-commerce experience. SEO, it's 50 to 80% of traffic. It's what's going to get people who are looking for, hey, how am I going to solve a medical problem or find a certain strain or a terpene? You want to rank and pop up first in that search for that specific problem that this person is trying to solve. If anyone's searching for something on Google, they're primed to buy something. It's not a social media ad or like a programmatic ad. So we take a lot of pride in creating great brands and a great UX online, but then all right, let's get them through the door through SEO for retailers, and then there's advertising. There's social media. If you have a great brand and great messaging, those are going to work very well. Like it's not rocket science. Like this is as old as branding goes in the history of mankind. Like those things actually convert. If you have a great brand, a great website, when those people land on that ad or onto your site, they're way more likely to make a purchase and, be tuned into your business. That's when the loyalty piece comes in, right? You
Hmm.
create that initial trust and that initial, hey, wow, like these people are involved in the community. Like I resonate with their story. Their brand is awesome. Their website, wow, that was so easy to add to cart and purchase. Man, I found them through some random search that I didn't think anyone would pop up for online about some skin rash I had. And that's when they're more primed to sign up for that loyalty program. And then that's how you get them to keep coming back for more. And it's really cool to be an agency for this long and watch this technology unfold over the years. Because early on, I mean, before COVID, it was like the e-commerce conversation wasn't really talked about that much with cannabis brands and retailers, and even loyalty. Like it's happening, but not like formally.
Hmm.
So yeah, like a lot of the bigger players in the tech area have really made it so cool for people like us because taking that tech and we're able to utilize our creative skills to dance around it and like get people through the door, get them to keep coming back, and then accurately tracking the data like down to revenue. Like we couldn't really do that in cannabis. Like, COVID really, sparked this all, and luckily in my favor as a marketer with a full service agency. But it's been really cool to like implement like actual normal branding and marketing tactics in this industry for once and see it come to fruition. Like it really works. Like I had a client this morning, they're advertising. We were doing a bunch of stuff for them, and then they hired a new marketing director, and he brought in a few other agencies to like complement us. Their ad account got shut down. Their social media got shut down. And, I'm sitting here like, I told you guys this is going to happen. Like, that's why we charge just a little bit more or like put a little bit more extra time, is because now you're just wasting money and time working with someone who doesn't understand the ins and outs of this industry and the different platforms that are out there. So it's been a wild ride, but like so cool to watch like all of this unfold and like all of these like really important marketing and branding lessons that I'm like constantly preaching on podcasts and to leads and clients. It's reality now. And it's just like, hey, it's like the answers are here. Let's align your strategy and like really do this right. So
Yeah,
um,
it's
it's been awesome.
that is awesome. It's an interesting thing to see people coming into the space and not, they may have, marketing and branding chops outside of it, but the headaches that they deal with us, because like you're mentioning social media, it's horrible. They
Oh
don't,
yeah.
it's in, there almost has to be a primer for people who come into the industry. It's like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you should expect this. And if you get shadow banned, this is what you have to do. Yes, it's a
Yeah.
lot of legwork.
That's like what we're doing. We're like actually like starting to like monetize that. Like
That's
I just sold a
awesome.
package. I just sold a package this morning where it's like we're gonna help this. I think they have like 9 or 10 locations or retailer. Um, they put a lot of resources into their photo, video design and their social media team. But when we did an audit, it's like, yeah, you guys are shadow banned. Like you have all these flag posts. Like you're putting all this money into this platform. Is that really worth it if like you're not actually getting exposed to the people you're trying to resonate with? And so we offered some packages where like we just come in with these guys, we're going to get them out of shadow ban, and then we're going to create like a custom SOP for their team to follow, like a guideline on how to get out of shadow ban and how to navigate their content creation per platform and things like that. But our normal social packages, we have a whole set period of time every week that we dedicate to compliance and getting like making sure accounts aren't flagged, and if they are, getting them out of it as soon as possible. And it's wild.
Yeah,
It's so weird in my opinion.
it is weird. And you've
Some of
got
the
to,
stuff I see on social is like way worse.
oh, I get I get so ticked off when I get shadow banned, and then I see somebody with like putting up videos smoking several joints at one time, and I'm like, man, I didn't do that. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, so
I
weird.
I'm always sending messages saying, hey, I am I'm a policy person. I'm a media person. Illicit use of any substances on my account. Will you help? And then I always get it back. And then AI always pulls it down. But then there's also talking about like the other ways. Like we have to be creative with our outreach. Like you were mentioning
Yeah.
COVID. It was really interesting because back, during COVID for over a decade, I headed up education for a chain of dispensaries. And I did in-person education classes. I took it to online during the pandemic. And, we would always have these conversations about these high-touch moments dealing with consumers. And leadership would always wonder, well, I like what you're doing, but what's the ROI, right?
Yeah.
So it was a really good chance to be able to look at that when we were doing online classes. So I did a anxiety, sleep, and depression class online, and I got over 200 people, not just in the Bay Area, but from all over the world attending this class, like wanting to
Wow.
learn. And so we put up a banner on the menu, and it was like, 10% off of Sara's picks, because I'd always choose 10 products, all modes of use relevant to the subject matter. And I had 7 different classes. And we pulled the numbers because the classes were every 2 weeks. Those featured products, more were sold through the classes than were sold through the stores. I mean, they were sold in the stores, but they were drawn to it because of the classes. And these are some of the things that I think, we have started when we were more homegrown, more mom and pop. There were more conversations around that.
Yeah.
And now with like compliance fears and things like that, companies are reluctant to have those conversations, but you don't have to have them in non-compliant ways. Like
Yeah.
people, especially like when we're talking about that swath of the population that we haven't even tapped into, they want to have those conversations. They want to know
Yeah.
more about things. I mean, because they look at a menu and they see, tablets, and they're like, well, what the heck do I do with that? And will that mess me up? You need to
Yeah.
have like a way of demystifying it for people.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And my favorite thing that's an outcome that happens sometimes when a brand or like a retailer is like really doing it right is when that person or that human who has some type of random, illness or disorder or, handicapped in some way, going on, and they're like reaching out because they want to share their story to others. And I love when that happens because it's such a great opportunity to like bridge that gap for people. And what's interesting is like navigating the compliance around that in like each state, to your point, is like, how do we get those stories out and make a difference in other people's lives and, share that inspiration and that kind of curiousness about other alternatives or, ways to help yourself. Um, and it's really intriguing to see like different clients' attorneys break down like the state law and the federal law and like how we should approach each situation. And what I've gathered is that like even if like we'll work with 2 clients in the same situation in the same state, but like their attorney and their compliance team interprets that how we should approach it differently than like another client's like attorney and legal team.
Yeah,
And that's like the world of cannabis is like, how do we do things the right way and do what's right? But then it's like, how do we follow this one person's interpretation of how you can do that versus another person's interpretation? Yeah, it's kind of wild.
it is.
Um,
And word of mouth is also just such a strong thing. But when you look at
yeah,
like, different states, the policies aren't, they aren't all based on fact. They're based on the culture and stigma. Like we were just in Alaska because Jeff was playing some shows up there. He played Salmon Fest this past August. He's hit all 50.
nice.
He's played all 50 states now. But, in the dispensaries there, they're not allowed to talk about anything medicinal. They can't,
Yeah.
and some of them actually had cigarettes that they were selling in there too. So that was a
Oh my
really
God.
it was in, I'm always leaning in. It's like, it's fascinating. I'm like, okay, so how'd you come up with that? Like,
Yeah, like what led to that conclusion?
yeah,
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about medical claims or medical, advice or experience, there's a lot of good like resources out there that back up what you're saying. And like anytime that we address something medical in like a blog, we always like base it off actual like research and
yep.
facts, and then like it's discovered in the past that this is known to help with this, not making any claims, but suggesting like, hey, this is what these people were saying about their experience, and here's what these other people were saying. These two groups in two completely different areas with two, all had the same experience, you know,
Your
one
mileage
plus
may
one
still
equals
vary.
two. Yeah, yeah, and that's true. Yeah, and it's so, yeah, it's really interesting. And to that point, it's also interesting, like the range of like our clients and like their perspective on like what information they want to have out there as well. Like some people are like very like gung ho about getting people to know how like cannabis can solve all their problems. And other people are like very conservative about it and like want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And then some states require you to provide that information too. Like I think it's New Jersey and Maryland, like you have to have a lot of like medical compliance information on your site already that the state like requires.
See, that's
So
fascinating. I
yeah,
love seeing how the different cultures influence and like who got in, who had the first conversation so that this got set up. I mean, it's like leaning into that and figuring out how we can learn from one another and create a greater access. And also, how do we, I know it's a lot, it can be heavy lifting for retailer brands, but how do we encourage people to go through the steps to figure out what works well for them and to take ownership of that experience? Creating that safe
totally.
container for experimentation. But I want to shift a little bit, like really getting into kind of like the more, I guess, the more cosmetic part of the industry. Like, so we went from, back when I started behind the bar, weighing weed in bags to having all this beautiful packaging and even getting into like more luxury brands and things like that. And what are your thoughts on like just just a trajectory and how things have been moving and what we're seeing now? Because I feel like there's still some homegrown stuff out there, but we're seeing a new level of sophistication with cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. Like I feel like again, like I experienced two opposite sides of the spectrum, right?
Hmm.
Like we work with people who are like in a state, they have no plans to go state to state. They're diehard, Vermonter or diehard, California, and there's no big plans. They're super focused on their small batch grow. They got in at the right time, and they're very focused on their branding and their design and packaging, like resonating with them, the state they're in, the creative aspect of their brand. And I love those projects because the quality of the flower or the quality of the products that they're producing are awesome. We get like extremely creative and like take things a little bit of a step further when it comes to like thinking outside the box. And then there's a lot of projects where it's like the opposite, where they're looking to scale very drastically in the state they're in, but they're looking to go state to state. We need to set up a design, branding, and packaging system that is easy to mimic state to state. So we're leaning into more of like that normal, high velocity branding and CPG perspective when we're creating this kind of identity and like packaging system, um, which is really cool. I wasn't always a fan of like the mass production of cannabis, but it's actually nice to see that there's all these advancements taking place to even have mass produced cannabis be of quality. But I don't know if I personally will ever be as big of a fan as I am as like the small batch, like home
Mm.
grower, which is way less likely to cross my path now than it was, years ago. Like there's a lot of grows for sale in a lot of states. Like a lot of people are just looking to get out of it. Like I'm seeing a lot of like consolidation, where, like bigger companies are coming in and like buying these smaller companies up. Um, it hurts me. Like we have a few cultivation specific clients we've worked on with, since like maybe year one or two of Puff Creative, which is like 8 years ago now. Um, and they struggle. And they have awesome brands. The product is unreal, like terpene and cannabinoid levels that like are just unheard of. Like people just like don't even believe it when they actually see the results.
Hmm.
And it's just so hard for them to navigate the climate that like the bigger companies have like created, with the price reduction, people choose branding over quality, in a lot of situations. So I experience it all. I have my own preferences on like who I like to work with and why and like what I'm passionate about. But at the same time, like I do enjoy the experience of catering to both ends of the spectrum as well, because it's really cool to see like my team like really lean into creative opportunity when someone's like, "Hey, here's what I think, but like do your thing."
That's
And
got
then
to be
there's like these.
fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then there's like projects that are very more straightforward where it's like, hey, like we're going for a very clean and simple design that we can mimic state to state that can, potentially be on the shelves of CVS one day or something along those lines. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just like that's what I experience like day to day. And it's kind of like the consolidation and is definitely something that I feel like is coming, especially depending on like where we land with like politics. I feel like over the next couple of years, like if we go federally legal and state lines aren't a factor, what does that look like for me as a business, and like what does that look like for my clients who are like in these situations?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean that it'll be interesting to see when we get into interstate commerce. I feel like in some ways
yeah,
it's an opportunity for smaller farmers, smaller producers, especially in the Pacific Northwest, to grow. But it's also going to
yeah,
be, it'll also be an opportunity for the behemoths who already have like dedicated shelf space and maybe when we go beyond the dispensary to have a presence there. And that's an interesting thing to see, like how that's going to pan out because
yeah,
I here in California, we've had some amazing brands that have gone away, not because um, they weren't making it, but because they're getting to the point where the reality was they didn't want to compromise the quality of their product to survive.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
yeah, yep. Yeah, and it's like, man, I tip my hat to those people, and it's like sad to see. We created this like amazing brand in California, this like microdose edibles brand, and she was getting into like functional mushrooms with her edibles, and like her process was like so amazing, and there wasn't really like a microdose solution that was taking this approach, and it was just like too good to be true. And she got into all these dispensaries, and like just the launch was amazing and was crushing it. And then like the facility that she was renting from was just like they tripled their pricing to like produce edibles there. And then her AR with like the dispensaries are just like owing her money, and like, it just, she couldn't do it. She's like, wow, like I want just world-class brand, one of a kind products, a great story. Like I'm in a bunch of dispensaries, which is so hard to do in California, and I'm gonna fail.
Yeah.
So it's just like, man. And she refused to change her process to produce the edibles that she was producing, because that's what her whole basis was like, I have this really great process. I use these really great ingredients. Like I'm one of a kind. And it was almost like the system was forcing her to just do what everyone else is doing in order to make it, instead of like honing in on like what's best for consumer, which is great ingredients, great sourcing of raw materials. Like, so yeah, like I said, it's a beautiful disaster out there, watching like it all unfold. Um, I still have hope for a lot of folks who are in that kind of craft situation. I do feel, and what I see in data is that consumers, as much as they are price conscious, there are a vast number of consumers who are educating themselves on like the benefits of quality. That's why there's like a whole like live rosin movement with stoners, because they're the first ones who are gonna, you know, hey, like I get a better high and cleaner high and better experience from this very pure raw material, rather than like a distillate or some, mass produced flower. I feel that with the demographic that we've been kind of talking about this whole time, like consumers who are brand new and haven't tried or experiment, that's also going to be, in my opinion, their perspective on it is like, hey, I want to dive into this new world of alternative medicine. I want to do what's best for my body,
Yeah.
and like what's going to be the best result. And so, I almost take it as like a responsibility as like a marketer to, again, continue to bridge that gap and show them like, hey, there is alternatives out there. And then even those alternatives, there's better decisions that you can make over others. So, I got my work cut out for me. I think we all do,
We sure
but there's so much bad and negative feeling, but there is so much good that is happening, and that like we can still look forward to regardless of how things land over the next couple of years. But
Yeah.
man, it's going to get wild. That's for sure.
It is going to get
Um,
wild, but I also feel like some of the projects that we're seeing that are gearing more to consumers, yet they're kind of like how, like how in the 70s, it's like I think about in the 70s, my mom was drinking like Lancers and Blue Nun, and we weren't talking about, fine wines. It was like the gallows were kind of where it was at. And then we started getting into more things like wine reviews, Wine Spectator, different things like that. And even though maybe consumers aren't getting an issue of the Wine Spectator sent to their house every month, when they're going to the wine store and they see like the little placards that say, so it's such and such wine reviewer rates it this, and there's like a small description of like the experience that they had. When we
yeah,
see things like, what Jocelyn Sheltraw is doing with Buddhist and having reviewers, and full disclosure, I'm a Buddhist, so I might be slightly biased.
I got mad respect to the brothers out there,
It,
especially Jocelyn. She's awesome.
she's making it happen. Her approach is really thoughtful. And I, when she first launched it, I kind of sat back and watched for a minute because I was like, well, what is this going to be about? And as I saw it evolve, I was like, oh, this is another opportunity to educate the public in a way that, it doesn't tax the retailers or the brands. We can create a conversation, be compliant, partner with, dispensaries, so people get another lens through which to see these products and see if they either see themselves in them or see what they want, the results that they want. They have goals. These are great conversations to have. And as we evolve, we'll be seeing more people having these conversations. And I really appreciate that too, because it helps the whole ecosystem when we start talking about that. Financially taxed. So they're like, oh, add outreach to the mix. Great. Yeah, let's throw money at that too. They don't necessarily have to do that because there's already a foundation there. There's already stuff going on.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Yeah, Jocelyn has always been like someone I've followed along the journey, and like I'm not surprised at like where she's landed with like her path. Like honestly, she's always been in it for the right reasons, and
Yeah.
it's really that's like been so cool too over the years. Like I've seen so many people just like come and go. But a lot of the folks who are like still around and have been around at least, the 10 years that I've been in the industry, have been, trying to take that path and like really make change and make a difference and have those great intentions and are navigating the interesting landscape of like business and politics and cannabis the right way by like maintaining that passion and culture. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in like that approach and that perspective just like prevailing through all of this, and that's like just kind of been my hope this whole time. Because even the 10 years I've been in it, like since day one, it's like, well, what's going to happen when, it's federally legal? Like it's always been kind of talked about. And yeah, to me, I can't wait to see what like all my heroes in the industry and people like I work with and look up to, like where they land when that happens, and like
Yeah.
how they're resilient, just like the plant
Yeah.
is.
Oh
Um,
God, isn't that the truth? I mean, you think about it, there's a resilience, and then there are two other things for success that I think are for any industry: mad skills and heart.
yeah. That's the truth right there. Oh my God. You have to have both to make it. That is for sure. Um, yeah, I know. We just like hired, it's like you're making me think of like we just hired an intern today. It was his first day, and I had like a one-on-one with him like first thing this morning, and he actually does a cannabis business class in Ohio at his college, which I thought was so cool. They learn about seed to sale. They can kind of pick what area they want to specialize in.
That's cool.
Which I'm like, yeah, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And that's kind of like the advice I gave him. Like, yeah, it's like a really cool industry, and like these skills you're gonna be able to take the rest of your life. And I want your experience to be kind of something that you always have and then feel special, regardless if you work with us full time at some point or not. But hey, man, you're gonna need to be resilient because like you're walking into a storm of stuff happening all at once and changing every single day. So he was like, I'm ready for it. Like, I'm excited. So at least he has a good attitude going into it, but we'll see how he feels in a couple months.
Well, I mean,
Because,
you think about it, like cannabis has done some amazing things. I mean, when in your life did you ever think that supply chain management would come off as somewhat sexy?
yeah, it's true. That is so true. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I never would have thought that I'd be having this conversation, and I was, 18 years old, just like
Right?
typical bro, stoner, surfer guy. It's like this is the last thing I thought I was going to be doing. I think I changed my like college major a few times, and then I ended up, I graduated, and my wife is an attorney, and then I kind of, was dabbling in the legal side of things a little bit. And I was like, I need to get my life together. And I got like an online project management master's. And I got judged for that too. A lot of judgments my way in my life. But you're like, oh, what are you going to do with that? Like an online project management master's. And that was like the best decision I ever made. That's like the world we live in is like digital
Oh yeah. Yeah.
communication and project
Yeah,
management.
you're ahead of your time. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know what I'm
And
doing with this.
little did I know that like that was going to turn to me like applying it to cannabis. It's like something I was doing all at once was like dabbling in selling it and getting this master's. Who would have thought that like that those two things would just be my life now? But like in the legal side of things, just I can't believe like where we're at, but like I also am like really gearing up to where we're going, considering that, right? Because like who knows what's going to happen if we're sitting here having this conversation, over the next like 5 to 10 years. Like it's just gonna drastically change and accelerate and like all the things all at once. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I love, I mean, one of the things somebody asked me just the other week, what do you love the most about the industry? And I'm like, the people. Like there's,
yeah,
they also say, well, what do you like the least? I'm like, the people.
yeah. My brain went there, but
You
it's so true.
It
No,
is.
it's so true. The people that cause stress, I view them as lessons and keeping them on my toes, right?
Totally.
I've learned the biggest lessons through people who have caused distress in my experience. But to your point, the motivation and my internal staff, like my staff is like my most important piece of the puzzle for me. Um, but it's like, yeah, like my relationships with like clients and like colleagues and partners in the industry, like yourself and Jeff, like it's so motivating. It's awesome. Like I'm like, man, there's like-minded people out there who get it, who are trying to do the same thing, who see this bigger grand opportunity with like how this can influence the world to go down a better path, especially than the one we're on right now. But yeah, like I love it, and it's like really what gets me going.
Yeah.
Is just like the relationships and like the good and the bad experiences with the people who cross my path.
Yeah. Oh, and the fascinating people that just come to the table. Like I love the personalities. I mean, before I was in cannabis, I worked corporate, and then I was in nonprofit and civil rights, and worked with lots of lovely people. But,
I'm
when
sure.
you're at work, it was like the game face, the work face. Whereas like you get some of that here, but there's a lot more transparency. There's a lot more, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I really dig that.
Same. Yeah. People, I feel like you don't get, like I feel like a lot of times in the professional setting, people put on like a mask almost. But in this industry, like people really lean into, I feel like, yeah, like their culture and like why they got into the industry and like how cannabis is a part of their life and who they are and like what makes them beautiful as a person.
Yeah.
Where yeah, you just don't get that in like a lot of other professional settings, but just like experience with people in general. Like I feel like a lot of times people have a mask on.
Yeah.
You don't really get their like true self. So it's
See,
cool to
and that's why in the normie world, bad shit goes down at the Christmas party.
yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, man. That's so funny. We do a digital Christmas party every year, so it doesn't get too crazy. But I've definitely had my fair share of like other outside of my Puff Creative experience Christmas parties, and it's always something.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I just remember like the first Christmas parties that I was at when I was working at the shop. It was like, I was like, wow, everyone smokes a little weed. It's cool. Boss can have an open bar because nobody really drinks. Um, there's no drama. Everybody's just chill. It's like,
Yeah,
it really doesn't get better than that. Now, you had some really cool activations at MJ BizCon that were like not just parties. You had some
yeah,
really cool like health
yeah.
driven things.
Yeah, we kind of so those were it's crazy we pulled them off, to be honest.
It's really
And
cool you did.
we did that in like I think we had like 60 days to get all of that together, which is insane from like a event planning logistics perspective. But yeah, I sent MJ Biz and I probably just reached out to the wrong people. Like this really creative idea I had on making the conference a bit more engaging and a bit more community focused to not only spice things up for them, but have an influence on how the industry approach conferences moving forward. Like kind of set this tone of like, hey, like let's do things differently and intrigue your current users, but have people really have a takeaway from this conference where it's like, we need to be involved in community. We need to be having these bigger conversations of change, yada, yada. Anyway, they ignored me. So, I had one, Ann Brum, who's a partner of ours who does events with us. she's just like, hey, like, you have a lot going on. That stinks they ignored your idea. I thought it was genius. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to respond to, being ignored and, some other stuff that we have going on behind the scenes that, just been a little bit negative lately. And so I came up with this concept of like catering to people's hobbies and interests, and we came up with this play, party, purify. So it's like networking in a setting like pickleball, where it's like you're actually being active and you have endorphins and adrenaline going, and then you're also talking to people in the industry who are experiencing what you are, who you could do business with, and that sparks a different type of conversation than just like being at a conference and being a little bit tired or hungover or whatever.
Yeah.
People are like really engaged and their brains are flowing with, all these great conversation chemicals, they're really, and it was cool. And then we came up with the party, concept where it's like, okay, let's lean into live music and art and, on-site consumption. And how can that spark great conversations and great connections, similar to like a lot of after parties where it's like a party, but really leaning into the art and music side of it. We actually had this DJ Box of Beats. His name's Layers now. He rebranded in the past couple of weeks, but he's famous for doing one-on-one musical therapy for people. So he actually did one-on-one musical therapy for people, catering to what's going on in their life and their feelings in that moment in time. And then he did like a late night live set at the party. So it was cool to like really lean into the party side, but more on the art music. And then the Purify side was, how can we get people to lean into their own, invest in their own personal wellness, because that's really what you need to do to get through this industry, to get to that long-term goal that we need to get to. And so we did a sound healing and meditation activation at Nuwu, which is the dispensary and event center on the Indian reservation in Las Vegas. And that was just awesome. Like, people were so zenned out. Some people had some like life-changing experiences, like during the meditation and the sound healing. And then the conversations that happened after, like there were so many people I never met before, and it just felt like they were already like family.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, it was really cool to have these. It was awesome. Like, there were some people that only were going to the pickleball, but then they had such a good time that then they came to all the events, and then they were like, this was so fun. I felt like I was at a music festival, and like I just had something so fun planned that day to look forward to. And I met people who I'm already working with, and like I had the best conversations. I learned so many new things about myself and the industry, and that's like really what I was going for with that. And yeah, like we had a client. He went to the pickleball, and then he didn't have tickets to the other ones, but he actually left two other parties that he paid for, because he was just like, man, I don't feel like comfortable here. And then he just came to ours like later at night, and then he's like had the best time ever. And like now he's a client. And then he ended up coming to the next event the next day, and he brought more people. And it's just like really cool to like see that happen. And I think that's what's so cool about cannabis, is people being open-minded and like accepting of like unique activations and concepts like that.
Yeah.
I think we ended up, it all balances out. I think like once you start doing business and networking with new partners and things like that. But like we probably lost a bunch of money on those events, and like I could care less. That was the best thing that I've ever done since I've been like since I started the agency. Like that was like so rewarding and like reassuring that like, okay, in it for the right reasons. There's still good out there in the world and the industry. Like I can still approach this the same. And then winning the award and like meeting you that night, like
That was
was just
so much
really
fun.
that was really like like the cherry on top of the sundae. Like it was just like so cool to like for all that to come together. And I was like so stressed out about it all working out, and probably not winning the award for 2 years in a row. Like that's impossible. There's no way we're gonna win this award again. And yeah, it all worked out. And
It did. We didn't think we were gonna win the award. I mean, like, we're a 2-person team, and we were up against the other nominees are all super awesome, And a lot of them had really large creative teams that were behind them. So it was,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful, it's a celebratory, wonderful, humbling thing to be acknowledged by your colleagues. And then to get to celebrate with everybody. It was so cool too.
Totally. Yeah, it's really cool. And I was like, I was with my staff, like we all work remote, so it was like really cool to like be with them in person, and like it was just reassuring that like I picked such a great team, and like, it just was really that whole experience is just like a really coming together moment for me in my professional career. And so yeah, now I just am motivated to keep experiencing that,
Yeah.
and how can I keep getting to that point and like innovating and inspiring,
Yeah.
it's like big, I'm trying to inspire along the way, even though it's like dealing with like business and personal stuff is like really hard to navigate when you're in the cannabis industry. I think if you're motivated, I keep circling back, but if you're motivated to be passionate throughout the beautiful disaster, like some really great things can happen.
And speaking of the beautiful disaster, what are you excited and hopeful about in the future?
So right now, I mean, there's a lot of things in life and outside that I'm excited and hopeful about, but about being at a political level, like I mentioned earlier with the federal legalization, like as scary as it is, like I'm also like very motivated to adapt to that. And like that's how I've been kind of setting up the agency is so we can be very agile and adapt to really whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
A piece of what I work on that I'm extremely excited about again is like the tech side of things, because the more advancements in tech and normality with how we operate, as a normal business, the more like my team can lean into their creative designs and strategy and community and making it all trackable. So I'm really intrigued on like the direction of tech and what that consolidation is going to look like, as well as like tech companies buy up other tech companies. And then on the product side, I am very excited about the advancements in not only the quality of the cannabis that's grown, but the consumption methods that are available to the different consumers that are out there. It's been really cool to kind of even like vapes, for example, like all the research that's come out on like how the combustion works with vapes. And there's, a lot of companies out there that are like, grabbing the bull, because some people can only really consume that way, or, some people maybe, yeah, they can just do, sublingual. So it's even cool to see the advancements in, fast acting and full, bioavailability. So you get that, close to 100% medicine through that one gummy, or whatever it is. So, yeah, I'm excited about the advancements in tech, intrigued about what's going to happen politically, and really excited to see what folks do in making the plant better for consumers, and hoping that that's the perspective that's taken as the industry unfolds, is consumer focused, community focused.
Yeah. And cultivating that curiosity. For people who want to reach out to you, follow you on social media, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, the Puff Creative website, PUFCREATIV, it's spelled a little bit strange, but puffcreative.com. All of those forums unfortunately lead to me, so you can find me there. Yeah, I am on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn, so let's connect, shoot me a DM. And then I'm pretty active on like Instagram as well. John underscore shoot, or I'm sorry, it's John Shute underscore, is my handle on there. But yeah, I'm a open book, and definitely don't be a stranger if you heard this podcast, because if you got this far, you probably might like what we were talking about. So we probably have similar interests and want to get to the same goals.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so
Uh,
looking forward to us talking, and I look forward to our future conversations as well. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please Give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are, and if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.